Hello and welcome to this edition of SFG Top Performance Feed and Grain Podcast. We kind of took a hiatus for about the last 6 or 8 weeks while we was in the heart of harvest, and now we're winding down in most of our areas as the beans are pretty well finished to the north. Still some down south. I think if you get south of 34, there's still some beans to combine. Corn, probably 90% plus done in the northern part of our region, and again could be a good 30% left down south. So not abnormal for the southern part of our region to be a little behind the rest of us, but on a statewide basis, south central Iowa has the distinction right now of being the only region that is truly behind, but some of that goes back to last spring when we had some wet weather in areas that prevented timely planting, and it also made us replant some crop down there. And a lot of areas in the state had better conditions during that time. So all in all, I think harvest went very well. Heard virtually no complaints about yield this fall. Yeah, there's a place or two where maybe the corn wasn't as good as they had hoped, but primarily, again, it's back to some wet weather issues there in early May that probably caused the problem. Otherwise, most of our area, record yield beans, I think, is pretty common. We kept hearing some yield data up in the 70s, even into the 80s occasionally, and that's pretty phenomenal for our area. Corn, I don't know if everybody would say they had a record yield, but most areas are right up there as good as it's ever been. And I've heard several producers, my age group, saying that they've never seen a yield like this. And of course, we may not see another one like this on corn and beans, both in this area. But that just proves that the technology's getting better in these genetics. And we didn't think we had any abundance of summer rain, and we didn't. But we evidently had enough to make things work. On the market side, quite a bit's happened here in the last 3 or 4 weeks. The USDA put out their November WASDE report last Tuesday, and on the corn side, it was fairly neutral. They did raise the yield a half bushel to 177 nationwide. That was pretty much expected. On the demand side, they raised ethanol 50 million and food and industrial another 50 million bushel. They left the exports alone at 2.5 billion, so the carryout dropped about 7 million bushel. Pretty minute number when you're talking corn. So again, a neutral report there. Beans was the big surprise. Going into the report, just about everybody felt that they would raise the average yield possibly as high as 52 bushel, and they came in and actually lowered the average yield 0.3 of a bushel, and that took it down to 51.2, and it kind of sent shockwaves through the board. Prior to the report Tuesday morning, beans were down about 6 cents if you looked at the January beans. And right after the report, they jumped up 30 to 35. We ended the day 23 higher, and we've been trending a little higher since. So that put some life back into this bean market, which is surprising. When you look at new crop prices, new crop beans are in that 1150 plus range. And I tell guys, hey, you can count on one hand the years you've had opportunities to sell beans at 1150 or better. But you need to take your shoes off to count the number of years that we've sold beans for 850 or less. And so I think that's the scenario we need to keep in mind, that we don't want to let this gift horse get away from us as far as being able to price some new crop beans above 1150. With the price of anhydrous and other fertilizers just kind of going through the roof, that's the easiest way to say it, because that's what they're doing. The board's going to have to entice people to continue to plant corn next spring. Our major growing areas, I think, will follow their typical rotation, but there's millions of acres on what I call the fringe area that will be looking for a different crop, and part of that will be soybeans. A good part of it could be, fortunately for us in this area, cotton is also a very lucrative crop right now, so we may see acres divert from corn to cotton also in some southern areas. New crop corn, it's still kind of in that $5 range local. I look for it to get better for the reasons just stated. I think in order to keep the acres, we're going to have to pay a little more for corn. The agronomy side, they're working on some break evens, and it depends on where you put your yield, but it could be very easy to say you got to have $5 break even next year on corn. There again, depends on your land cost and your yield. That's going to play a big role in this, but we know the expense side is going to be probably fertilizer could easily be double what it was a year ago. Seeds a little higher. Chemicals will be a lot higher. We're still working on chemical prices, but the problem there is getting the raw products into this country from China and some other places so that we can produce the chemicals. And that means a supply issue could develop, or it already has really. So that puts us at the mercy of a lot of people. Bottom line, I think for those that still have a crop to market, we need to be putting together some plans, take advantage of some prices, and be prepared to pull the trigger. Just sitting on it worked last year, worked very well for some guys. This year might not be so good, especially on beans. So pay attention to what's going on around us. We're no longer a United States market. We're long past that. We're a world market, and so everything that goes on in this world plays a bigger role all the time. So with me today, we've also got Scott Goetz and Kent Watson from the feed department. They've had a lot going on. A lot of calves been weaned the last 2 months, and a lot of things going on with fall calving and whatnot. So I'll turn it over to Scott first, and he'll give us an update.
All righty, thanks, Mark. So going into this fall, I thought we was going to have a quick, easy harvest. That kind of proved me wrong. It's been kind of drug out. Seems like it's lasted forever, but there's a lot more grain to take care of than there has been the last few years. So I think the beans in the Old Wood Elevator and Milo, there's more in there than there's ever been before in its entire life. Last Sunday night, I was packed completely full. Thanks to Mark and our truck drivers for keeping the grain rolling in Milo this week. We couldn't have done it without them. So we started anhydrous last weekend. Sounds like it's going on real well this year. Unfortunately, we didn't need the rain, but maybe we can get going again soon, hopefully, maybe by the end of next week. So on the feed side of things, we're getting into our busy season. A lot of calves are going on feed now that harvest is over. I thought I'd talk a little bit about bulk feed and our ordering process. Had a customer call me the other day, and he ordered some bulk feed, and I asked him my same typical questions, and he wanted to know why I ask the same questions every time he calls in. He thought that I should know the answers by now, but I don't. So whether you call Albia, Milo, Kent, or myself to order your feed, there's certain questions that we are going to ask every time. They might seem a little repetitive, but please keep in mind that we deal with hundreds of feeder locations, and the more information we can get, the better service we can give you. So after we get the information, it gets typed out on your feed order, and then we also print a map to your location and a blow-up map of your farm. On the blow-up map, we try to pinpoint the location of delivery. All of this makes it easier for your driver to make his deliveries, and this allows him to ask questions if something looks different from what he's seeing on the map. We do all this to help make us more efficient and cut down on mistakes. As our business grows, efficiency is going to be more important than ever before. Smith Fertilizer's service is our specialty, and that is our goal, to provide you with top-notch feed and top-notch delivery. So that's why we ask the questions that we ask, and just bear with us. Things change out there, and we don't necessarily always know that. So I guess that's about all I got on my end of the feed stuff. Kent, what have you got?
Well, I was trying to, now that harvest is about over with, and probably a majority of the calves have been weaned. I was sort of trying to figure out what would be a good topic for today, and all I had to do is step outside this morning, and I got my topic. The old wind was blowing like crazy, and snow was blowing by, and I thought, this might be a good time to talk about a few things to sort of do ahead of time to get ready for get your not only yourself but your cows ready for this for the winter and these colder temperatures. A few simple things that we can do now can go a long way and stopping or preventing some major problems down the road. So, one of the things at this time, if you haven't done it, preg checking your cows. Obviously, if the cow is not pregnant, you need to, it's time to get her down the road, because you can't feed a cow all winter long and not get a calf hour next spring. When you're pregging these cows, a good thing to do then too is warm them, get them warmed so that they're more efficient for feed conversion, and also they're healthier. A healthier cow, obviously, she can withstand colder temperatures. We need to check our water sources, have a good plan in place, so that if you have to move cows around or things change, they got to have access to good fresh water every day. Even during the wintertime, a cow's going to drink 8 to 12 gallons of water a day, and it's essential that she has that water for her to do her metabolic processes in her body. I remember I had a customer years ago that he had a bunch of automatic waters, and he was all set and everything was going good. But these cows weren't drinking water, and he couldn't figure out what in the world was going on. And turned out to be there was just enough current running in that water that the cow didn't want to stick its head in there and drink. And it wasn't enough to shock the cow or anything like that, but it was just enough to keep the cow from actually drinking. So just plan a little ahead of time, checking that, putting a voltmeter or something on there, and making sure that, just things like that could stop, a major problem from happening. We've talked about in the past, but we definitely need to test these forages. We need to know what we have and what we're feeding, so that we can, supplement accordingly. It can help you, with the price of everything being higher. It keeps you from maybe underfeeding or overfeeding on some of your supplements. And the only way we know that is know what your forage quality is. The forages are the base for all your cow operations. It's critical in the wintertime, because that fermentation that takes place in the rumen provides heat, and that provides warmth for that cow from the inside out. Also, it would be a good idea maybe to check the body condition of these cows right now. These cows that have a body condition of a 5 or 6 have a good layer of fat on them to help provide insulation for them. Also, that generally means that they've had good nutrition, which will promote a good hair coat, help to keep the cow warm. Some of the thinner cows, it might be a good idea to separate them out so that you can feed them a little heavier or differently than what the rest of the cows are getting. Another thing too is you should make sure that you have a good source of bedding. If you can keep a cow relatively free of mud and as dry as possible, it goes a long way of provide insulation between that ground and that cow. And a muddy, wet cow her critical body temperature could go up as much as 15 degrees. It could be, she might be able to handle 15 extra degrees of colder temperature. So it's important to try to keep that cow as clean and dry as possible. With that, and then too is, if make sure you have adequate wind breaks or some place where the cows can get, like on a day like today with the wind howling around, if they can get in someplace out of the wind, it goes a long way to keeping them warm and healthy. So, and then finally, we want to make sure that we have a good mineral and vitamin program and have access to it every day. And then, maybe have supplements or lick tubs or something available to provide extra protein so they can digest these forages and convert it into useful energy. Right now, we are running a very aggressive special right now on all Hubbard minerals. So if you have some mineral needs and you want to get some good prices, just check with either myself or Scott, and we'd be glad to help you. So those are just a few of the things I think we need to be looking at. Maybe get ahead of the curve so that we won't, when the weather really gets bad, we can be in a situation where we're ready for it. So that's about all I got.
Well, thanks, guys. A lot of good, helpful hints there and tips to help our cattle producers. This wraps up this edition of our podcast. I want to take a moment to thank our customers. We've had a tremendous harvest. We did our best to improve some facilities, and I think it's paid off. The people coming into Milo have been very appreciative of the fast unload speeds and how Scott's handled things up there. And he mentioned we've got a tremendous force of truck drivers. Not only have they picked up a lot of grain in the country, but we continue to move grain out of these elevators to make room. Our goal is to always have an opening for your grain. So thanks for your business. We look forward to servicing you in the future.